Did the Tavistock Institute, a shadowy British think tank, secretly engineer the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and the entire rock and roll revolution of the 1960s? I'm about to unpack some mind-bending claims, dig into the Rockefeller Foundation's role, and question everything we thought we knew about the 1960s counterculture movement. The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations was founded in 1947 in London. Born from the Tavistock Clinic's work in psychological warfare during World War II. Officially, it's a non-profit studying group behavior, workplace dynamics, and social change. But some claim Tavistock was a hub for social mind control, using Freudian psychology to manipulate the masses. They say it was a part of a globalist agenda to reshape the culture, and rock and roll was their secret weapon. Funding was provided through a major grant by the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefellers have funded everything from global health to agriculture since 1913, pouring over $26 billion into projects worldwide. Their mission? Promote human well-being through scientific philanthropy. But critics argue their funding often aligns with nefarious agendas, like the 1937 Radio Project, created to study mass media's effects on society and included Tavistock-linked researchers like Gordon Allport. Today, Tavistock's U.S. network allegedly runs on $6 billion annually, some claim from taxpayer money, which is near impossible to trace, as it's endlessly funneled through NGOs and shell corporations and will never be audited. Other rumored funders include British royalty and globalist groups like the Ditchley Foundation, tied to the Rockefellers and the Council on Foreign Relations. This web of influence makes you wonder, were they just studying society or shaping it? The Beatles exploded onto the scene in 1963, sparking Beatlemania and the British invasion. But according to Dr. John Coleman, a self-proclaimed ex-MI6 agent, they weren't just four lads from Liverpool. They were a Tavistock project designed to brainwash youth. Coleman claims Theodor Adorno, a philosopher from the Frankfurt School, wrote their lyrics to push rebellion, drugs, and a breakdown of family values. The idea was to create a new type of youth culture, long hair, cool slang, and dropping out, all Tavistock-coined terms to fragment society. Coleman points to the Beatles' rapid rise, orchestrated by Tavistock's media control, and their Yellow Submarine album cover, where some point out obvious Masonic hand signals. He even claims Paul McCartney's replacement after his alleged 1966 death was a Tavistock cover-up, with Heather Mills knowing too much. Online forums tend to amplify this, alleging the Beatles' music was part of the Aquarian Conspiracy, a Tavistock Stanford Research Institute plot to destabilize America. But here's the catch. There's no hard proof Adorno wrote their songs, and he famously hated pop music. Plus, the Beatles' early work, rooted in skiffle and R&B, feels more organic than orchestrated. Still, their cultural impact, from teenager culture to the hippie movement, aligns eerily with Tavistock's group behavior research and cannot be disputed. If the Beatles were the good guys, the Rolling Stones were the bad boys, and it is alleged that Tavistock crafted that image too. Coleman and others claim the Stones were designed to push darker themes, like their 1968 track Sympathy for the Devil, allegedly sponsored by Prince Rupert Lowenstein, a Bavarian aristocrat linked to the Order of Malta and other elite circles. The Stones' manager, Andrew Loog Oldham, reportedly shaped the rebellious image to contrast the Beatles, a classic good cop, bad cop tactic. Some online forums even tie the Stones to MKUltra Subproject 138, a supposed CIA Tavistock operation for cultural transformation, though declassified documents on this are unverified. The Stones' raw energy and satanic imagery definitely fueled the counterculture, but their roots in London's blues scene and influences like Muddy Waters suggest that the group's origins may have been organic. Still, their elite connections and cultural timing raises eyebrows. So, was rock and roll itself a Tavistock psyop? Theorists argue the 1960s counterculture, hippies, drugs, turn on, tune in, drop out, was no accident. Tavistock allegedly worked with the Stanford Research Institute, funded by the Rockefellers to promote figures like Timothy Leary, who pushed LSD, and bands like the Grateful Dead, managed by Alan Trist, son of Tavistock founder Eric Trist. The goal? Create a post-industrial zero-growth society, undermining traditional values and industry. The Rockefeller Foundation's 1937 radio project, studying media's psychological impact, lends some credence to their ability to manipulate culture, but the lack of concrete documents tying Tavistock to specific bands and media figures makes it tough to verify. Though one could argue that bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, as well as some of their handlers, could have easily been unknowing participants. Why would young rebellious kids who are being given fame and fortune ever question why or how it's happening? Only the most plugged-in of handlers would need to be privy to what was really going on behind the scenes. It really doesn't sound so far-fetched that a mysterious institute like Tavistock with a multi-billion-dollar budget could artificially create culture. In fact, one could argue that it perfectly explains how these very organized and well-timed cultural movements happen. The Tavistock Institute, backed by Rockefeller money, had the means to influence group behavior, and their funding ties to globalist networks are undeniable. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones' meteoric rises in cultural impact fit the conspiracy narrative, but hard evidence, like documents proving Adorno's involvement or Tavistock's direct control, is missing. But we don't necessarily need documents to see what is right in front of our eyes today. You ever notice that suddenly everyone is listening to the same song by the same new artist that seemingly came out of nowhere? Then you hear an engaging story how the artist supposedly came from nothing, struggled, until by some miracle, one of their songs went viral with millions of streams worldwide. All of the sudden, that artist is everywhere, and anything they promote, anything they do, becomes the culture. None of that is by accident. And no one you see being promoted is there by accident or dumb luck. There is always someone behind the scenes making that happen. The artists themselves might not even know exactly who or what that is, and why should they care? They're getting everything they ever wanted. All their dreams are coming true. Watch for the patterns. They run the same play over and over again. The question is, will you keep falling for it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your own research, and let's keep questioning.